Well, before the season started, Indiana and Penn State would have been must-see TV in the Big Ten, but here we are, Week 11, both sides heading in different directions. Nittany Lions entered the year as a national championship aspirations, but instead they've gone 0-5 when it comes to their conference. While Curt Cignetti and the Hoosiers have been rolling, 9-0 record, and seem like they're a legit contender the closer we get to the CFP. Take a look at it. Indiana setting the standard a year ago, but have kept the main identity intact this season. Almost identical numbers when it comes to points per game differential. But the one thing that might change in their favor, it depends on that record. 11-2 last year. We'll see what it is in 2025. All right, for more of the conversation, Jeff Rabjohns and Tyler Donahue here from 24/7 Sports to paint the picture for Saturday's showdown between the two. But Jeff, I'll come to you first. The Hoosiers are one of 6 remaining undefeated teams on the year. What do you expect this group to kind of keep that intact come Saturday?
Well, I think one of the biggest things for Indiana is that they've been able to win games in different ways. And, you know, they've been high-powered on both sides of the ball. They're number 1 in the country in scoring offense at a little over 46 points per game. They're number 3 in the nation in scoring defense, holding teams to a little less than 11 points per game. They're the only team in the country that's top 3 in scoring offense and defense. They've got 5 50-point games. Everybody talks about quarterback Fernando Mendoza, and he's obviously a Heisman Trophy candidate, and certainly deservedly so when you look at not only his production, but the points that he's leading his team on. But Indiana also can win running the ball. They have 5 300-yard rushing games so far this season, the most in program history in a season. And if you look at, okay, well, what are they doing defensively against the run? They have not allowed a team to rush for 100 yards in 8 consecutive games, which is also a program record. So what they're doing is winning games in a variety of different ways. And I think that's one of the reasons that they're a legit contender to make a run in the college football playoff.
When it comes to Penn State, it's a second consecutive week where we thought this would be a big-time matchup, a stepping stone toward the playoff, and instead it's just another milestone marker. Funeral procession toward Thanksgiving weekend here for the Nittany Lions. 5 consecutive losses coming into this matchup. First time back in Beaver Stadium since James Franklin was fired. And so, it feels like this is Indiana's moment for the taking. Penn State last week against Ohio State, they continue to show that they can lose in different ways. Defensively, the Buckeyes threw all over them. A week before that, prior to their bye week, Iowa ran all over them to get that win in Iowa City. And so I think you look at Indiana's offense, how they come in, they have a similar aggression to what we saw from the Buckeyes last week. Terry Smith, the interim coach at a Monday press conference, said there's a lot of similarities in the way they're going to want to attack Penn State. And it's been a problem for Penn State's defense under Jim Knowles through 8 games. It's limiting big explosive plays through the air. Last week, Ohio State 3 gains through the air of 50-plus yards. Julian Sayin, their quarterback, had fewer incompletions than touchdown passes by the end of that matchup. And then offensively for Penn State, there's been a lot to point to and a lot of blame to go there. They're under 150 passing yards in 4 of their 5 Big Ten matchups this year. They've really struggled to get vertical. Terry Smith said they got to stop going horizontal so much with the pass game. They've got to be able to push the ball downfield. And if they want to do that against Indiana, I think the key is really going to be continuing some success on the ground. Kaytron Allen has looked like one of the Big Ten's best running backs throughout this season. Nick Singleton's coming off his best performance since going back to mid-September. So they've got to generate something on the ground, not just to give their an offense a chance to pass the ball off of that, but to keep Indiana's high-tempo, explosive, point-scoring offense on the sideline for as much as possible in Beaver Stadium. Try to control that time of possession a bit on Saturday afternoon.
Penn State will have to deal with another quarterback, this time Fernando Mendoza. And Jeff, I'm curious, as we continue to get close to the end of the year, you start thinking that Heisman case getting a little bit stronger. How does that increase this week?
Yeah, I think if you are a quarterback and you lead a team to something like that they've never done in program history at a place where that has some significance, and obviously Penn State, a historical blue blood in college football, Beaver Stadium, just a great place, especially when they get 100,000 plus in there. Indiana's never won there. So if Fernando Mendoza leads Indiana to another one of those first time in program history type things, I think that helps his case because it's not only what do you do, in my opinion, it's what do you do relative to who you are and who you have been. Fernando Mendoza is playing quarterback extremely well, and he's also elevated a program to a place it's never been before, and potentially, beyond that. So I think that's something that really, it's just another line in the resume, so to speak. he did this for the first time in program history. Indiana did these 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 things for the first time in program history under Fernando Mendoza. And you look at some of the drives he's leading. You look at different metrics for quarterbacks. One of them that I find interesting is points per drive that you led as a quarterback. Yes, you got to look at completion percentage and yards per throw and exactly what the quarterback's doing. But I think it's also interesting to look at how actually efficient and productive is an offense under a certain quarterback. And Indiana goes out to Maryland. They score on 8 consecutive drives. And yeah, a lot of that was the running game. But Fernando Mendoza asked him about it after the game. We were talking about it, and he kind of joked and he said, "Okay, you want to drop 8 guys and take away the pass? Fine. We'll run 370 some yards down your throat." Fernando Mendoza is about winning games, and I think if you ask any coach in the country, do you want a guy who's out there just trying to get his yards, who's going to make some terrible throws, or do you want a guy who's all about trying to win games? I think they're going to like Fernando Mendoza's quote after the Maryland game.
Indiana, with Mendoza leading the charge and Cignetti, of course, the head coach, they've completely ripped to shreds that flash in the pan, that argument that last year was a one-and-done situation for Indiana and being in this kind of a spotlight. And I give all the credit in the world to them. And I think this opportunity, although Penn State has a 3-5 record, it's not a huge matchup in terms of win-loss, but this is still a major blue blood brand in the Big Ten, nationally. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs on this game, maybe some people who wouldn't regularly tune in to an Indiana matchup. And I think Mendoza has a real chance to grab that spotlight and run with it. Not only does he have the statistics to support his case, I think, but to Jeff's point, he's a tone setter for this team. He's a guy that drives them down the field. He keeps them on track, and he closes out opponents with routine. And so I look at this matchup, and I remember that Penn State has a 25-2 record all time against Indiana. They've never lost a game against Indiana in Beaver Stadium. They've won 3 in a row. But this is a brand new era for both of these programs, and Indiana has a chance to come in, plant its flag in Beaver Stadium, and really add to that resume for Mendoza and also for Curt Cignetti, who's already gotten paid for it.
Mendoza, by the way, second best odds behind Julian Sayin at plus 220 to win that coveted trophy. Speaking of second shortest odds here when it comes to CFP, that's 3-5 Indiana here, Jeff. Could that stay the same here if they continue on this trend?
I mean, it could. I think some of the metrics certainly factor into account who you beat and where did you beat them. And Indiana has the signature win of the country right now, going to Oregon and beating the number 3 team in the country and beating them by double digits in a place where going into that game they had the nation's longest winning streak. So obviously the metrics take that into account and it gets significant weight. But yeah, I think Indiana could end up, at the end of the year, right up there. I think it's pretty clear that the 3 best teams in college football right now are in some order: Indiana, Ohio State, and Texas A&M. I think those are the 3 best teams. I really do. If you look at, how teams are playing on the field right now. If you want to take body of work, then you got to throw Alabama and Oregon in there as well, certainly. But just how are you playing right now? And are you beating good teams? And when you play an average team, are you crushing them? That to me tells a little bit of how well you're actually playing football. Can you actually just dominate somebody? And Indiana's dominating, Ohio State's dominating, and Texas A&M's dominating. I think those are, from my point of view, I think those are the top 3 teams in college football right now.
I want to go to the other side here and Tyler, give you a little shine when you're talking about Penn State, because obviously it's a different offense than what we saw at the beginning of the year. But if you're looking at what they can do on the ground with Kaytron Allen and Nicholas Singleton, is this a chance for them to slow this game down to their favor using that ground and pound?
Needs to be, to give them a chance to make this a game in the fourth quarter. And I think they are in a pretty good momentum right now on the ground. Kaytron Allen has been doing it all season long, but it was good to see Nick Singleton. During one touchdown drive against Ohio State, he had 42 total yards. In the 2 games combined previous against Iowa and Northwestern, he had 41 total yards across both of those matchups. So they're doing some more to get him involved in space coming out of the recent bye week. And Kaytron Allen, to me, is the guy that you got to keep getting 20 to 28 carries to him, because he has been their best player on offense. And to give your young quarterback a chance, it's going to be his first start in Beaver Stadium, Ethan Grunkemeyer. You've got to have the ground game as a foundation early and often. Otherwise, I think it could fall apart at the seams pretty fast for this offense.
We'll see how that pans out there between those 2 sides. All right, let's get a game pick here. And Tyler, since you have home field advantage, you got first word.
Yeah, I'm not expecting a big bounce back from Penn State against this particular opponent. Maybe we'll see them find generate some momentum with wins down the stretch. But this instance, I think I've got 38-17 Indiana coming here, winning their first game in Beaver Stadium. Again, we just haven't seen it from the vertical pass game. I know it's a point of emphasis now for them in this final month of the season, but to figure that out against this particular defense in this setting, I don't like the odds there. So I think this is a matchup where, again, like last week, you get to halftime. There's some contentious nature to it. Indiana fans might be hemming and hawing a little bit, and Indy Lions fans might wonder if they found a spark. But I think the cream will rise to the top over the final 30 minutes of play, and Indiana will get away with a 3-touchdown victory.
Yeah, it was interesting talking to Kurt Cignetti early in the week. He pointed out that Penn State was a national championship contender to start the season, and a whole lot of the guys who are reasons why are still in uniform, even though the Penn State has gone through a lot of drama, lost their quarterback, and had all the issues that they've had. And I think a lot of people look at Penn State's running backs and they say, hey, those could be Sunday guys. There's some other people you look at and say, hey, those could be Sunday guys. So I think Penn State runs the ball enough for a quarter and a half, 2 quarters to kind of slow this thing down, keep the score within striking distance. But I think over the course of 4 quarters, Indiana takes over. Indiana wins the game. I got Indiana winning 35-17, getting their first win ever in program history in Beaver Stadium.
All right, sounds like the consensus to Hoosiers moving to 10-0 when it comes to Saturday between the two sides. Tyler and Jeff, appreciate your time breaking that all down. Of course, Saturday, we'll see how this pans out there at Beaver Stadium. Don't forget, when it comes to college football, Week 11, you can find all the skinny on college football on the YouTube page. All you got to do, look to your right, use that QR code to get access.